Hello and welcome to another episode of the Pitt Mailbag Show from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We're your Pitt beat writers, Christopher Carter, Stephen Thompson. We're here inside Pitt's training facility. We are having a pretty busy week coming off of the Greenbrier tournament, Louisville, and then heading into Thanksgiving where Pitt football takes on Boston College and Pitt basketball takes on Ohio State. So lots to get into, but we still want to answer your questions right here on the show that you can submit to us via email and Twitter, or you can subscribe to all the shows here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Let's get into our first question, which is the big football question right now, heading into this game against Boston College. Pitt still now on a four-game losing streak?
Four-game losing streak.
Four-game losing streak with one regular season game to play, and it's in Boston College, who comes off of a very strong win against North Carolina. And of course, the big question in everyone's mind, which Bradley asked us via email, is how serious is Eli Holstein's injury? Seems like Pat Narduzzi left the door open for him to return, but it seemed pretty bad on the field. Stephen, you were there. He came back out on crutches. I was watching on TV from West Virginia. What is your read on how Pat Narduzzi addressed the injury situation and what you think is going to happen here?
Yeah, it was interesting. So, Pat Narduzzi referenced he thought it was a hip drop tackle, which is obviously illegal in the NFL. No rules against it in college that injured Holstein. But, talking to him after the game, he talked about Nate Yarnell being a little bit banged up still from that Clemson game, not getting a whole lot of prep time going into Louisville. But he said, he pulled Nate Yarnell at the end of the third quarter so that he could preserve him, because he said, and I quote, we're going to need him down the stretch of the season. So I think that they're looking for Nate Yarnell to play in this season finale against Boston College. It's at least how it seems. But I think he did leave the door open, saying it's not a season-ending injury, that if they have a few weeks going into that bowl game, they'll have some time to get Eli healthy and maybe get him back into the swing of things in time for the postseason.
I know it's doom and gloom for Pitt fans with this football team, and look, they haven't given you much reason to believe, but yes, they are eligible for a bowl game, and yes, they probably will take whatever invite they'll get, and with that, you'll probably have an opportunity to see Eli Holstein again. But I think the big question that has to be on Pat Narduzzi, has to be on these trainers, has to be on these coaches, Cade Bell's mind, is you got to protect Eli, because now that's three different games in the past month that he's gotten injured and had to leave the game. That's just not a good situation. You don't want that to continue, because if he gets hurt again in the bowl game, that's going to be 4 games. And then how beat up is your redshirt freshman quarterback heading into his redshirt sophomore year?
A redshirt freshman quarterback who likes to run and who they like to use in the run game. So it's a guy who's going to take a lot of hits naturally, but the pass protection has to be better to kind of limit the amount of hits that he's taking.
Absolutely. We move on with another football question. This one comes from Alex via email. Alex asks, what's next for Rodney Hammond? Is there any chance he returns to Pitt next year? Rodney Hammond, of course, announced that it was announced by Pat that he was going to be redshirting during the Monday press conference. Stephen, bit of an odd year for Rodney, because started off the season with an undisclosed reason for a suspension from the team, and they said it was going to be the full year. Then he all of a sudden is back like a month into the action, and then not really used, because Desmond was really good, but he wasn't really much in the rotation. He plays in a few games, and now all of a sudden he is not going to play in Pitt's last game and last 2 games and preserve his red shirt.
Yeah, it makes sense. Look, Rodney had such an odd year and wasn't really able to get anything going, and this is his last year of college eligibility. So I think you kind of have to understand what Rodney's doing. If he wants to have a future in football, he wants to finish his career strong. It's got to be, because he can't, make this his last game of the year. He's going to be a backup in that game against Boston College. If he was going to play, probably not going to get a lot of touches, and he's got to put some better stuff on film if he wants to maybe make it to the NFL or something. I really don't expect that he's going to end his career at Pitt, though. It seems like Pat Narduzzi, he referenced, Rodney's got to make a business decision, but I have to make a business decision too. I think there maybe is a strained relationship there, and I think both sides are just going to kind of go their separate ways, wash it away, and everyone's going to get a kind of fresh start elsewhere. I would be really surprised if Rodney Hammond is in blue and gold next year.
Yeah, I have to agree. It's kind of crazy, because that kind of continues over from last year. You and I were here when we were asking Andre Powell, who was the running backs coach last year before they really just uprooted the entire offensive staff. But there was at one point when I tried to give Rodney credit as a power runner, and he said, "What evidence do you have of that?" And I was like, "Well, the Syracuse game, the Sun Bowl game," and he didn't, and like he was like, "I guess," and so I was like, "Whoa!" I was kind of taken aback by that moment. And so last year we saw wrinkles of maybe the coaching staff having issues with Rodney, and now you see just whole tears right there. So I agree with your assessment. I don't think he'll be back this year. And that's it's unfortunate for Rodney because he had such a strong start as a backup, and everyone was kind of hoping that he would take the mantle once Israel Abanikanda left for the NFL. Part of it probably is the offensive line, kind of dealing with all the injuries. They didn't develop any younger guys after them. But certainly an unfortunate situation, but one that's understandable by both sides when Desmond Reed's giving you great production. And then, Rodney Hammond's having his situation. He wants to show, hey, I can play in the NFL. I can put on some good tape, but probably best that he's going to have to do that somewhere else next year.
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to beat out Desmond Reed. They've got a young guy in Joel Goff who they really like. I think it's just better if everyone gets a hard reset next year and goes their separate ways.
Absolutely. Last question from Evan via email asks, who has to step up for Pitt basketball with Damian Dunn out for an extended period of time? Of course, Damian Dunn, senior transfer guard they got from Houston, was averaging 11 points per game, playing pretty well. Simultaneously got a sprained ankle and a dislocated thumb injury in Pitt's loss to Wisconsin within the first 2 minutes of the game. That now knocks him out, they report, for at least 6 weeks, announced by Pitt on Monday. That's a tough loss. Damian Dunn was a starting guard. He was sort of their 6'5" guy that was, more physical, more experienced, could guard taller guards. And we saw it limit them a bit in their game against Wisconsin when John Tonji got Ishmael Leggett into foul trouble. Pitt really didn't have another person to be able to guard someone that had the size and driving experience and physicality that Tonji brought, and that's where Dunn could have fed in. So, Stephen, I think this is a hole that they have to fill. I think it means a lot more Brandon Cummings, but it also might mean a lot more Amsel Dalilich when you look at how he was being used on defense to guard some of the taller guys.
Yeah, and I think you might welcome Zach Austin back to the starting lineup. I think
Mhm.
Zach's played really well. He's not going to give you the same scoring punch that Damian Dunn gave, but I think his athleticism, his length, his defensive ability has been really valuable. His rebounding has been really good as well. So Zach Austin, I think, is one name.
He's the starter for sure.
Yeah, you can expect him to take a step forward, but it's going to be some more Brandon Cummings. It's going to be some Amsel Dalilich, but Damian Dunn did a lot of stuff for you on both ends of the floor that
Yes.
you're going to have to replace by committee now. So, it's Dalilich giving you some scoring and some shooting and some playmaking. And then it's, Cummings and Austin giving you some energy off the bench and some rebounding and some defense. So it's not going to be just, one guy fills that hole. It's going to be a bunch of different guys kind of contributing to the whole.
Absolutely. Zach Austin has been great off the bench for Pitt. He came out and I think he gave 10 points in that Wisconsin game. Was really, and he's been that defensive energy, that spark plug that's really gotten things going. He blocks shots. He helps. He brings help defense, and it's his block shot ability that allows those bigs, Cam Corrin, Guillermo Diaz-Graham, to just sort of stand tall and not have to get too aggressive and draw fouls because they know he's coming to help on a lot of those plays. And he's hit a couple 3-pointers to start the season. He's given them a chance to space the floor. So I think Zach Austin will do a fine job. That's funny. It's when I was thinking of people who are going to replace Damian Dunn, Zach Austin to me was like a foregone conclusion. Yeah, he's going to start. My thing is, who's going to pick up the minutes? Where coming off the bench, Zach Austin brought that energy.
Right.
Someone's going to really need to replace that, and that's where I thought Dalilich had a really good stretch there at the end of the game. There, he had a big 3-pointer, a really good drive dish. There was one play where he had an assist from under the basket where he kind of swung it around up to Austin, great enough, and they hit a big 3-pointer that sort of kept Pitt alive for a few extra minutes. If Amsel can adapt to ACC play or college basketball play in America a little bit quicker, that could be a big answer for Pitt to kind of rally and survive the next 6 weeks or so that they'll be missing Damian Dunn.
Yeah, and the defense really has to improve for Dog, right? I think the offense is going to come, and you've seen the progress there. But he picked up 2 really quick fouls when he got into that Wisconsin game, settled in a little bit, and I thought, in his second shift, he started off with a really nice defensive possession. But that's going to have to be more consistent. He's going to have to be able to stay on the floor in order for him to actually fill in for Dunn.
Absolutely, those are all our questions for this week's Pitt mailbag. Remember, it's a short week of Thanksgiving, but it's still an action-packed weekend with Ohio State and basketball on Friday and Pitt versus Boston College in Boston College on Saturday. We'll keep you covered here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette all week long. Subscribe to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette at post-gazette.com. Find this show every Tuesday on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily content that comes from all of our Pittsburgh sports writers. Stay tuned for a lot more action all week long.